Today, we're going to take a look at this new 4K UHD Blu-ray release coming from Scream Factory, which is a sub-label of Shout Studios, of this 2000, yes, the year 2000 horror film, What Lies Beneath, starring Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. This is the 25th anniversary edition. It has a new 4K transfer, which we're going to talk about here in just a bit. Now, this film is part ghost story, it's part psychological thriller, it is part star-powered showcase for its stars, which are, of course, Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. And I first saw this apparently 25 years ago when it first came out. I remember liking it okay. I thought maybe it was a little mid, but I'm going to do a reevaluation of my thoughts of the film. We're going to talk about this 4K transfer, and we're eventually going to look at this release. We're going to look at the physical packaging of the release. Now, if you would do me a favor and go ahead and like this video. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, something cool happened around the year 2000. Somewhere around that ballpark, all of a sudden, like A-list actors were acting in horror movies. Now, the horror movies may have been maybe a little less horror-y. They had to be a little more highbrow because you had like name actors in it like Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. But it was pretty cool. It kind of started probably around when The Sixth Sense came out. That's one of them, and I recently did a review of The Stir of Echoes, which came out around the same time. Now, you can check out my review of this imprint, really thick box release. You can check out my review on that on my channel. Another one, like The Others with Nicole Kidman. So there was suddenly a lot of really cool horror films. So a lot of these films, as they're going, kind of seem like they could be leaning towards a psychological thriller, but then they end up to be, whoop, supernatural horror. I kind of do like that mixture. I don't know, in this particular film, we're going to talk about how it works in this film. Some films it works better than others. So this film was directed by Robert Zemeckis. Now, Robert Zemeckis is known for Back to the Future, but he also did Castaway. He doesn't do that many horror films. He did do this is kind of a horror film, but it's Death Becomes Her. It kind of leans towards horror a little bit, but it has a great cast, and Bruce Willis is in it, just like he was in The Sixth Sense. But here, Robert Zemeckis does dive into horror. He does. It's like a psychological horror, and then suddenly horror with the Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer, who both turn in really terrific performances. I think that it's interesting to see Harrison Ford cast against type, and which we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But Michelle Pfeiffer is really the main character of the film. Now, Harrison Ford plays a large part, but Michelle Pfeiffer is the protagonist of the film, and she turns in a really great performance here, really nuanced performance, different layers to this thing. Now, and this, in general, this film kind of depicts the effects of a narcissist, and the victim. Like Michelle Pfeiffer is the victim of a narcissist, and she displays all of those qualities quite accurately and very convincingly. And she also, later in the film, she becomes possessed by a ghost, and she acts like another person. Michelle Pfeiffer is a great actress anyway, and she really turns in a fantastic performance here, a very powerhouse performance. Harrison Ford plays against type, and he does a great job, and everything he does works. I don't know if I necessarily want to spoil the film to talk about his performance, but it is great. But as far as upon this rewatch, I was really impressed with Michelle Pfeiffer's work. Now, a quick rundown of the plot. This woman who is living in this house by a lake. It is a newly renovated house, and she starts to see, or thinks that she's seeing a ghost in the house, and it's and she's starting to kind of lose her grip on reality. And she previously had been in a car wreck, and so she's kind of been recovering from that, and so but she starts to see weird things happening in the house, and as it goes on, and she's there with her husband, played by Harrison Ford, and he becomes very concerned with her. He has her go to a psychiatrist, played by Joe Morton, who isn't. She goes there a few times. He's not like a major character, but she goes and talks to him a few times, and she really is kind of opening up to the character. But this it's kind of builds. It is a slow build of a film, and it has different layers to it as far as I actually do like the progression, the supernatural aspect of it, and then later on in the film, it becomes more of a a thriller, like a thriller for a little bit, and then all of a sudden some more supernatural elements kind of pop in. Now the frequency of which the supernatural elements pop in is a little off. At first I was like, upon this rewatch, I was a little bored at first, but then as it started to go on, I've started to become it becomes a little like I guess I don't know if scary is not really the word I'm looking for, but it becomes really suspenseful and a little like creepy as things start to happen around the house and you don't know exactly what's going on. But then that kind of briefly gets resolved, and so it doesn't become so scary anymore. There's on the front of this. Now this thing here is so friggin' white. I know it's like just blowing out here. It's a white cover, but it says on the back of it, it says does for bathtubs what Psycho did for showers. So there is a bathtub scene in there where she's in the bathtub and she's paralyzed and the water starts to fill up and she starts to almost drown. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be that. It could be kind of Psycho for showers, for bathtubs, but it was a little tedious for me on both watches, because it was like that part of the film to me got a little tedious, and it was like they were really trying to that was really late in the film, and they were really trying to, like, I guess, prolong the suspense. And the movie is slightly over long. It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And it definitely in the later part of the film, there are some parts I felt were stretched just to try to make you put someone like that in a position for like a long period of time that's really hard to take. Well, the supporting cast here is pretty good. You see a few people that you may recognize, like James Remar and Miranda Otto play the next door neighbors, but they're kind of used sparingly. You see them a lot in the first half, and then they disappear in the second half, unfortunately. But they're not really involved with the plot of the second half. You kind of think there's something going on there, but then it ends up not being anything, which is kind of a red herring thing for the plot. But really, once it gets into, there is quite a surprise in this film, which kind of reminds me a little bit of The Sixth Sense. Not in the way that somebody's dead and you don't think that they're dead, but there is a bit of a twist that works, and it is fairly surprising. The film is it's a bit of a slow burn, but it does have a building suspense, and then when these twist things happen, it kind of becomes maybe a little headache inducing, because they're not, I mean, the twists are realistic, but it's like you feel really bad for Michelle Pfeiffer's character as they go forward. Let's talk about this new 4K transfer. Now, I saw this a long time ago, so I don't have it on any other medium but this. And here there is a 4K and a Blu-ray in here. Now, both of them come from the same 4K transfer. The 4K, here's what it says. It says a 4K transfer from the 35mm camera negative, and it was approved by the cinematographer. And that same transfers on the 4K and the Blu-ray. 4K does have HDR, what the Blu-ray doesn't, but it looks fairly outstanding in both the 4K and the Blu-ray. It was shot on film, but you don't see like a large amount of film grain. It's really nicely resolved. You have to really look for it to see the film grain. It is there, but you have to look for it. As far as especially the HDR on the 4K, the colors of the faces, they really, especially Michelle Pfeiffer's face, the color of her face is very saturated. The colors of the HDR, the high dynamic range, look terrific. They're living in this new, well, it's not a new house. It's like a lake house that's been remodeled. So there's some very interesting set deck going on here that really stands out in 4K. They've got some accent walls, painted walls, and there's some pretty deep set deck within the location. That's where most of it takes place. There's also some other locations, but probably like a good 80% of it takes place inside of this lake house. But it looks really good as far as the way the set design, and also it looks good here in this 4K upgrade. I thought I was very impressed with it. The blacks are somewhat deep. They weren't not like overly deep, but they look to be right where they need to be. And I did see a lot of it was the coloring on the faces and the close-ups here. A lot of detail in the 4K. Even on the Blu-ray, it looks really good because it's the same transfer, just not as many pixels, but it's hard to tell the difference. Now, as far as the packaging, now I don't know if it's still available, but if I bought this from the Scream Factory site directly, I could have gotten a poster. This one does have a slipcover with it. I don't remember where I got it. I think I got it from Target or something to that nature, but it does have a slipcover with it that is very white. The poster's the same artwork as this. And so that's the artwork. You just got the bathtub, her hand reaching out of the bathtub. There's not a reversible. There's no reversible artwork here. It's just a white page on the back side of this. There is a 4K here with Michelle Pfeiffer on it, and then a Blu-ray with Harrison Ford. And that's really, as far as like the packaging, that's all there is for this one. There is some bonus materials. There is a brand new feature-length documentary, which I hadn't checked out yet, and there's a lot of archive bonus features as well. So it's pretty impressive for, you know, the new documentary. That's specific to this new release, and it's a feature-length one. I hadn't checked it out. If I was doing like a longer review on this, I would have definitely watched it. But since I want to keep this a little short, I didn't want to have too much information in my head about it. There are a few scenes in this film that take place underwater that are some pretty solid underwater photography. I assume it probably was really done underwater. And if I watched this making of documentary, I would probably know that as a fact, but maybe I'll check it out one day. The sound mix is immersive. There's some quiet moments, and then there's suddenly loud moments. It doesn't go too like sort of thing, but it kind of gets you a few times. It doesn't go too crazy with it, but the sound design here, it sounds good. I watched it on a mono television. I don't have like some crazy surround sound sort of thing. I tried that one time, and it would just like woke everybody up in the house. So I just have like a mono to watch it through the TV, but I could hear everybody's dialogue pretty good for the most part, and I could hear all the sound effects and the music. But let's go ahead and rate the film and Scream Factory's presentation here. I'm going to rate the film. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. It is a great psychological horror film. It is a great performances by both of the main lead actors. The supporting actors are great too, but they just don't have enough. They aren't given enough meat to chew on. Here, that's a weird analogy. But this, but as far as it's not quite the classic it needs to be. It just because it feels like a lot of it's been done before in a way. It does have a cool little twist, and it's really, to me, it's the mixture of, like I was saying before, with the supernatural stuff. It doesn't go deep enough into the supernatural, so sometimes when the supernatural stuff comes up, it's kind of spread apart in a way, so it kind of seems a little jarring in a few times when it really becomes suddenly like crazy supernatural. As far as what Scream Factory has done here, I'm going to give them a 4-star rating. This is a little white. It doesn't look as white to the eyes as it does on screen here. To me, I'm sure it's like blowing out white. Very simple design. I would like to see a new design on the cover. I don't necessarily not like this one. I would have liked to see something a little different for this. This isn't like a collector's edition. It is a 35th anniversary edition, but it does have some very impressive bonus features and a new 4K transfer, which to me, the 4K transfer is usually the most important thing. Anyway, let me know what you think about this new release of What Lies Beneath, and if you've seen the film, or even if you only saw it a long time ago, what you remember about it. Because my memory of this was pretty close to what it is. I didn't quite remember everything, but I did remember like the twist in it. I guess that's the biggest thing. But I think once you know the twist, you can enjoy other parts of the film a little bit more. Anyway, if you would do me a favor and go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.